Well, good evening, vinyl community. I've had a few dry weeks, so no new records to show until now. This is following a very satisfying trip to San Francisco, but starting with something that just arrived in the mail. This is the brand new reissue of the Grateful Dead's Wake of the Flood. You can see I haven't taken it out of the shrink wrap yet, so it's still got two stickers on it. I love the back cover of this album. It's really great that they didn't put any text here. They just leave it like this with that really remarkable image of the crow, a recurring symbol in Grateful Dead lore. The album comes with a little reproduction of a flyer, and this is the only place that the track listing shows up. There's also a reproduction of a postcard concerning counterfeit copies of the album being in circulation and warning people how to identify those counterfeits. I think I probably had one of those back in the day. I don't know for sure. And the album itself is on this very cool watermark vinyl, I think they called it. And we have the crow on both sides. So again, no track listing on the cover or vinyl itself, but they've got that little flyer, and it is quite a track listing. This is not one of my very favorite Grateful Dead albums, but it's a really good one, and it's just full of songs that became staple of the Grateful Dead's live set, like Mississippi Half Step, Uptown Tootaloo, Row Jimmy, Stella Blue, Eyes of the World, and the excellent Weather Report suite. So that is what came as the mail call on Saturday. And then up in San Francisco to see a show, and stopped in at Amoeba and at Grooves and got some very cool stuff. This is one of my my very favorite John Coltrane albums, which is to say one of my very favorite jazz albums, or very favorite albums. This is not one I just got, but this is the Meditations album as it was originally released. An extraordinary album with the classic Coltrane quartet augmented by Pharoah Sanders and Rashid Ali. Well, this is the album that came out in the 70s titled First Meditations. And it's performed by it's a recording from about 2 or 3 months earlier than the version that was released. And this is by the classic quartet of Coltrane, Tyner, Garrison, and Jones only. So no Pharoah Sanders skronking it up, no additional drumming from Rashid Ali. And the album, as the title leads you to expect, is a more meditative side of Coltrane. Even though this is late period Coltrane, it's free jazz, this has a more inviting and melodic component to it than the real fire music. He certainly does get up into the more ecstatic reaches of the saxophone at points, but it's really a more spiritual. It's spiritual jazz, you might say. But it just has a more sweet feeling to it than the really forbidding and spiky stuff like Ascension. This is, as I mentioned, from the 70s. It's got the original ABC inner sleeve. So it's on the green Impulse label. Now, the green Target Impulse label has a bad reputation for vinyl quality. And when I put the needle down on this, because it looks pretty clean, it's got a scuff or two on it, but it looks really nice. And I had cleaned it before playing. I put the needle down and boy, was there a bunch of noise. But whoever cut it did a great job, because as soon as the music enters, you don't hear the noise at all. So it's a good high-level cut, and it sounds great. Also, that was from Amoeba Records. Also at Amoeba Records, I picked up Paul Bley and Scorpio. It's a trio, and the rhythm section is classic kind of rhythm section of the period. Barry Altschul on drums and Dave Holland on bass. They played on so many records with varying combinations of Chick Corea and Anthony Braxton and Sam Rivers. This has Paul Bley credited, the very first instrument he's credited as playing is the ARP synthesizer, or the ARP synthesizer, along with various electric and acoustic pianos. So you kind of expect a lot of the synth. You expect it maybe to be more electronic than it is. This is mostly piano trio work with a degree of funk to it, but he does, particularly on side 2, bring on the synthesizer and get a little outside, culminating in the final track, which is just a really bizarre piece of music with Altschul like playing in Morse code and Dave Holland sounding like he's playing with about 5 arms because he seems to be bowing and plucking the bass at the same time. It's really wild, and of course Paul Bley enters with the synthesizer. So that last piece is Ictus. Really sends the album off in a spacey direction. Here's one that I really didn't expect to find. Miller's Tale by Steve Miller Trio with Lol Coxhill. Not that Steve Miller, not the Joker guy. There's no Pompatus of Love on here. This is the Steve Miller who was briefly in Caravan and in the jazzy prog band Delivery, and is the brother of Phil Miller from Hatfield in the North and Matching Mole, and many fine jazzy records of his own. So with a connection like that, there's definitely a Canterbury theme to this. The Miller's Tale, of course, is from Chaucer, and this is a sort of parody of the procession of the Pilgrims to Canterbury. Very similar to what was done on a Caravan compilation titled Canterbury Tales. I think some of the caricatures of the actual musicians on here may be pretty much identical to what you see on that rather more elaborate color painting. Double LP, this was recorded in 1985 and released in 1986 on the Matchless label. And the album consists of 4 side-long tracks, all free improvisation, all 4 musicians just spontaneously and very equally contributing to the sound. Great stuff, very free, very outside, but still very listenable. Really enjoyed that. Another really outside record, finally, this one was from Grooves. I found Stomu Yamashita, and not one of his fusion-y or jazz rock albums, but a pure contemporary classical recital. Compositions by Hans Werner Henze, Peter Maxwell Davies, and Toru Takemitsu. Side 1 of the album is the Henze and Takemitsu pieces, both of which are for solo percussion joined by pre-recorded tape. So there is that electronic music aspect to this. Very heavy going in terms of the Hans Werner Henze piece. It's titled The Prison Song, or just Prison Song, and it really has an alarming feel to it. It's not a pleasant place to be, prison, I guess. I hope I never find that out. The Takemitsu piece is also very complex and extraordinary in its sonic resources. Side 2, the Maxwell Davies piece, is more restrained. It's for percussion without any additional tape, and restricted entirely to metal percussion. So it's a more light, and sonically easy and unified sound world on that track. This is a gatefold LP on the excellent L'Oiseau Lyre label, which for some reason, although it's a single LP, has pockets on both halves of the gatefold. So the record I found in the front pocket, but in the back pocket, a previous owner included this, a concert program from the Los Angeles Philharmonic, Contempo 71, evidently 1 year after the famous Frank Zappa 200 Motels performance with Zubin Mehta and the Los Angeles Philharmonic, which was called Contempo 70. This is a program for a concert featuring Stomu Yamashita, and also works by, not the same works that are on this record, but Hans Werner Henze, his piece Essay on Pigs, and also a piece called Being Beauteous, and a piece by Maxwell Davies, 8 Songs for a Mad King, which in fact is conducted by Zubin Mehta. And there are a lot of other pieces on this program, including a composition by Yamashita called Prisms, not related to prisons. And there's, just as a kind of point of interest, Yamashita performs a solo composition by Hurtleturtled. I don't really know Hurtleturtled as a composer, but I know him as a former music critic for the San Francisco Chronicle, whose career as a critic for the Chronicle came to an ignominious end when he published a review of a performance that did not take place in the form that he was expecting. So he apparently did not attend the performance, submitted a review, and only found out afterwards that the program had been changed so that the piece that he criticized was not performed. So that's just a little anecdote about Mr. Turquoise. Pretty cool to find. I haven't, in quite a long time, found somebody's personal inclusion in a used record. So this is a nice little artifact. So those are the records I found on Saturday. No, Sunday. Those are the records I found on Sunday. Got to correct myself. Want to give a public thanks to Derek Higgins, who's been very kind, giving me shout-outs, helping me promote my own music. This is his latest album. If you haven't heard it, I've shown some of his stuff before. This is Interlude, so you might want to check that out. We've got a Bandcamp Friday coming up this week, this being Tuesday the 3rd as I record this. And do please, if you haven't already, take the opportunity to use Bandcamp Friday or any day at all to check out my music. I've got 4 vinyl albums available on Bandcamp. I've also got some CDs available, some that are CDs of the same albums that are out on vinyl. I've got some that are only out on CD. This is my album Paleozoic from 2017. This is my album Rat's Alley from a couple of years ago. I notice when I do get sales, they tend to be familiar names. The people who like what I do, they tend to come back and be repeat customers. So I really, really appreciate those people, but I do wish that some folks who haven't heard it before might give it a try. So there's a Bandcamp Friday coming up that gives you an opportunity, and as always, there'll be a link in my description for where to buy. Thanks again. Oh, I also want to say hi to Ambi. Ambi's always watching and always very kind in the comments, so hi. And that's it. Thanks very much for watching. Be well. Talk with you again soon. Bye-bye for now.